My name is Anna, and I thought buying my dream cabin would finally give me the life I'd always imagined. But I was wrong. The betrayal came from the one person I trusted most, my fiancé. He didn't just break my heart. He tried to erase me completely, using our home to rebuild his old family behind my back. But this time, I wouldn't stay silent. This time I had a plan, and they'd never see it coming. I'd spent years chasing a quiet dream, a refuge from the endless chaos of city life. As an interior designer running my own studio in San Francisco, I'd worked tirelessly. Days blurred into nights, and weekends vanished beneath piles of sketches, fabric samples, and blueprints. But through every exhausting moment, I held on to a vision. A place far from deadlines and demands, somewhere I could truly call home. And finally, after saving meticulously, I found it. A rustic cabin tucked away in the Colorado Rockies, nestled in a clearing beside a serene lake and framed by towering pines, just an hour's drive from Boulder, yet hidden enough to feel worlds away. The first time I stood on the porch, breathing in the crisp mountain air, I felt a rush of certainty. I knew this place was mine. It was perfect. My fiancé, Lucas, shared in my excitement, or so I believed. We'd been together for 3 blissful years and engaged for 6 months, our dreams neatly intertwined. Each night after dinner, we'd huddle around the kitchen table in our San Francisco apartment, flipping through catalogs and sketching renovation plans. Lucas would laugh warmly, teasing me about my perfectionism as he penciled in where to place the antique bookshelf or the plush armchair I'd already chosen. He had this way of making even mundane tasks feel special. "I can't wait to watch sunsets from the porch with you," he'd whisper, his eyes crinkling gently at the corners as he held my gaze. Those words filled me with warmth, a reassuring promise of a future we'd carefully built together. I imagined us kayaking in the lake at dawn, planting wildflowers along the cabin path, and cozy evenings curled up by a roaring fireplace. A place our future children could grow up exploring nature instead of city streets. Yet dreams have a cruel way of shifting beneath your feet. One soft summer evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting a golden glow across the lake, Lucas stood leaning against the porch railing. I approached him with 2 cups of coffee, ready to savor the quiet moment. But when he turned around, his expression made me stop cold. Tension etched lines across his forehead, and guilt shadowed his usually gentle eyes. "Anna," he began, his voice unusually flat. "We need to talk." A nervous flutter stirred in my chest, but I forced a calm smile. "Sure. Is everything okay?" He hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. "It's about Melanie." My stomach tightened instinctively. Melanie, his ex-wife, the mother of his 10-year-old daughter, Sophie. Lucas rarely brought her up, and whenever he did, a shadow passed briefly over his face, a subtle sign of old wounds. "What about her?" I managed, my voice guarded. He sighed deeply, avoiding my gaze. "She lost her job recently and things are rough. Sophie is struggling too. They need somewhere to stay for a while," and my heart dropped. "And?" I prompted, barely above a whisper. "They're moving in here with us," he finished quickly, eyes finally meeting mine with a mix of apology and stubborn resolve. "Just temporarily, until Melanie gets back on her feet. It's the right thing to do." The right thing to do. Those words echoed in my mind, cold and distant. I stood frozen, my dream cabin suddenly feeling like it belonged to someone else, a stranger's home. Lucas's decision, his announcement, wasn't just shocking, it was crushing. He'd taken my sanctuary, my vision of our shared future, and offered it up without even consulting me. It wasn't simply the intrusion of his past, it was a betrayal of the careful trust I'd built my entire world upon. I felt a surge of disbelief turn swiftly into anger, burning hot beneath my skin. But I swallowed it down, telling myself I could handle this temporary disruption, for Lucas's sake, for Sophie's sake. After all, I loved him deeply. I wanted to believe this wouldn't derail everything we'd worked for. Yet as I stood there, watching the fading daylight vanish behind the mountains, an unsettling feeling stirred deep inside me, whispering the truth I wasn't yet ready to face, that this temporary arrangement was just the beginning of something far more sinister, and my quiet refuge was about to become the stage for a battle I never saw coming. Lucas promised it would only be temporary, but sometimes promises have a way of unraveling when you least expect it. 2 days later, Melanie and Sophie arrived. From the moment their car pulled up to the cabin, I felt like an outsider looking into my own life. Melanie stepped out with an air of quiet confidence, casually scanning the surroundings as if appraising a new purchase, while Sophie hid shyly behind her mother, clutching a worn teddy bear. My heart softened momentarily for Sophie. She was just a child after all, but when Melanie's gaze met mine, my guard instantly rose again. "Anna, thanks for being so generous," Melanie said with a practiced smile. Her eyes lingered on mine, sharp beneath the softness of her tone. "Of course," I replied, forcing warmth into my voice. "Make yourselves at home." And just like that, my dream cabin, my sanctuary, began slipping away, piece by piece. Within days, subtle changes started appearing. At first, it was just Melanie rearranging kitchen utensils, moving decorative pillows I'd carefully chosen, or replacing my wildflower centerpiece with a vase of roses she bought herself. Lucas noticed nothing, or pretended not to, laughing off my concerns as trivial. "Anna, don't be silly," he'd say, touching my shoulder reassuringly. "She's just trying to help." But Melanie's presence quickly seeped into every corner of our lives. She prepared elaborate dinners, dishes she knew Lucas loved from their married years, subtly claiming back territory I never knew was in question. Each night, I returned from my studio in town, exhausted and craving the quiet intimacy I once shared with Lucas, only to find him at the dining table, deep in conversation with Melanie, reminiscing about vacations they'd taken, friends they'd known, or Sophie's childhood milestones, memories that didn't include me. One evening, standing unseen in the kitchen doorway, I overheard Melanie's laughter floating through the air, gentle and soft. "Do you remember that weekend in Aspen, Lucas? How carefree we were." Lucas chuckled warmly, a sound I knew all too well. How could I forget? We stayed up until dawn, just talking. My stomach tightened painfully, realizing he hadn't spoken to me like that in weeks. I felt invisible, erased slowly by their shared past. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Before I reveal the turning point in my story, I want to pause and connect with you, my amazing viewers. Where, into the world are you watching from right now? Drop your country's flag down in the comments below. I'd love to see how far my story is reaching. And I know many of you might be watching this alone, so let me gently remind you, wherever you are right now, you're never truly alone, at least not while I'm here, sharing this story with you. Now back to that turning point. Late one afternoon, after finishing an exhausting client meeting in town, I came home earlier than usual. The cabin was strangely quiet. I found Lucas's laptop lying open on the kitchen counter, still logged in, and something caught my eye, a message notification, popping up rapidly. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. The messages were between Lucas and Melanie, and the words sliced through my heart like a knife. Lucas had written, "She tries too hard with Sophie. It's honestly pathetic." Melanie replied, "I know poor Anna. She's desperate to impress us. Did you taste that dinner she made? I could barely swallow it." Lucas's reply was devastatingly casual. "Just humor her. We need her, at least until we figure things out." I stood frozen, my breath shallow and uneven, shock spiraling into rage. I scrolled up instinctively, uncovering deeper layers of betrayal. They'd been discussing their future together, rebuilding the family they once had, with no room left for me, except as a convenient stepping stone. My pulse pounded fiercely in my ears as tears blurred my vision. But amid the hurt, anger ignited a fire I hadn't felt before, a determination to reclaim my dignity. They thought they'd played me perfectly, but they underestimated one thing. I was no longer willing to stay silent. This was my home, my dream, and I would not let them tear it from me without a fight. Lucas had chosen deception and betrayal, but I chose strength and resolve. I wouldn't confront them, not yet. I'd let them believe everything was fine, while quietly planning my next move, one they'd never see coming. The next morning, I woke with a renewed clarity, a resolve sharpened by betrayal. Quietly, beneath their radar, I began setting things in motion. I discreetly contacted a trusted realtor friend, explained my urgency, and within hours, she had a potential buyer lined up. An elderly couple eager to retire amidst the tranquility of the Rockies. Their names were Joan and Henry Stevenson, and something about their gentle sincerity instantly told me they'd cherish the cabin as deeply as I once had. Over the following days, I wore my silence like armor, every smile carefully placed, every casual conversation meticulously staged. Lucas remained oblivious, convinced I was still the woman who'd quietly accept his betrayal, blind to the simmering strength he'd unknowingly awakened in me. Finally, the deal was quietly finalized. Joan and Henry visited briefly one afternoon, while Lucas and Melanie were in town with Sophie, giving me just enough time to welcome them into what would soon become their new home. Henry, a tall man with kind eyes, shook my hand warmly and whispered, "We'll take good care of this place. You can trust us." I smiled softly, feeling a pang of bittersweet relief. "I know you will." Everything aligned perfectly. Lucas and Melanie had planned a weekend away, arrogantly assuming the cabin would be waiting to welcome them back, secure in their quiet deception. As they packed their bags and prepared to leave, Lucas hugged me goodbye, unaware it was our last embrace. I felt nothing as his arms wrapped around me. No warmth, no sorrow, only quiet certainty that I was finally reclaiming my life. The weekend passed swiftly. I spent those hours carefully packing my belongings, quietly saying goodbye to the dreams that once lived within these walls. As I locked the cabin door for the last time, the weight of my decision felt both empowering and painfully liberating. Lucas and Melanie returned early Monday morning, their car rolling confidently up the driveway, their faces glowing with anticipation. I watched discreetly from across the road, hidden behind a grove of aspens as their confusion slowly unfolded. Joan and Henry stepped out onto the porch, calmly waving in greeting. Lucas's confident smile faltered instantly. I could hear the faint echo of Lucas's voice, strained and confused, carried gently by the mountain breeze. "Excuse me, who are you?" Joan's calm voice responded evenly, unshaken by his confusion. "We're the Stevensons. We bought this cabin last week from Anna." Melanie's face drained of color, her confident facade crumbling in an instant. Lucas stumbled backward, fumbling for his phone, fingers desperately dialing my number. I felt the vibration in my pocket, saw his name flashing, but ignored it without hesitation. Let him feel the silence he'd subjected me to, the helplessness I'd endured. I watched as Lucas paced desperately, trying my number again and again, his composure unraveling faster than he could control. Melanie stood motionless, the reality of their plan collapsing around them. Sophie, innocent yet caught in the crossfire, stood quietly beside her mother, sensing the turmoil but unable to grasp its magnitude. A surge of triumph and quiet satisfaction filled my chest, not from cruelty, but from reclaiming the dignity they'd so carelessly stripped from me. I had taken back control, leaving them to face the consequences of their betrayal alone. Lucas had thought me weak, predictable, easily manipulated. But he'd underestimated the power of a woman who'd been pushed beyond her limits. Turning away from the cabin one final time, I walked calmly toward my car, leaving behind not just a home, but a life I'd long outgrown. Ahead of me lay uncertainty, but also freedom, a future shaped not by their deception, but by my own choices. And for the first time in months, I breathed deeply, feeling truly and undeniably free. In the weeks that followed, my life unfolded into something I hadn't expected, something lighter, richer, and entirely my own. Free from Lucas's shadow, I poured my energy back into my design business. My creativity surged like never before, attracting clients who resonated deeply with the authenticity I now embraced. Slowly, I found myself reconnecting with parts of my identity I'd neglected, each step forward healing wounds I'd long ignored. One afternoon, as I was sketching quietly at a cafe downtown, a message popped up on my phone. My realtor friend had shared a link, casually adding, "Thought you'd find this interesting." Curiosity stirred. I clicked through to discover a heartfelt post from someone named Nate, a local nature photographer whose personal story eerily mirrored mine. He had opened up vulnerably about betrayal, loss, and finding unexpected strength amidst the wreckage. Moved by his openness, I reached out, sending a simple, empathetic message. Within hours, we were exchanging conversations effortlessly, sharing stories, insights, and laughter that quickly turned days into weeks. Nate was refreshingly genuine, his calm strength evident through each gentle word. Over time, our bond deepened into something beautifully sincere. When Nate suggested we finally meet, I felt both nervous and excited, my heart cautious yet hopeful. We chose a cozy coffee shop downtown. The moment he walked in, his presence instantly comforted me, matching perfectly the person I'd envisioned through our countless exchanges. Nate carried himself with an ease that instantly made me feel safe and understood. Our connection was effortless, each conversation flowing naturally, peppered with laughter and gentle pauses that spoke louder than words. Together, we explored hidden trails in the mountains, shared sunrise hikes, and discovered joy in quiet, ordinary moments. Nate never rushed anything, quietly honoring the pace I set, a reassurance I'd never known before. Months later, as autumn painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Nate invited me to meet his parents. Nervous excitement fluttered in my chest as we drove toward their home. As the familiar winding road came into view, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. Nate smiled warmly beside me, oblivious to my growing curiosity. Then, suddenly, recognition hit me sharply. We pulled into a familiar driveway, lined with towering pines and gentle aspens shimmering softly in the breeze. My breath caught as I looked toward the porch. Standing there, smiling brightly, were Joan and Henry Stevenson, the couple I'd sold. My beloved cabin to all those months ago? Nate chuckled softly, noticing my stunned expression. "Surprise," he said gently, his eyes sparkling with warmth. "I couldn't believe it either when they first told me who you were." Stepping from the car, Joan immediately embraced me like an old friend. "Anna, it's so good to see you again. Fate certainly has a way of bringing people back together, doesn't it?" Tears welled softly in my eyes as Henry placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, nodding in quiet acknowledgement. In that perfect, surreal moment, everything felt beautifully complete. A circle closing gently, fate weaving threads I'd never imagined possible. Later that evening, beneath the soft glow of porch lights and surrounded by the familiar warmth of the cabin I'd once dreamed of, Nate held my hand gently, quietly sharing his vision of our future. It wasn't grand or flashy, just honest and real, a life built together, rooted in trust, kindness, and quiet strength. Looking into his eyes, I realized my greatest victory wasn't in revenge or reclaiming what was lost. It was discovering the courage to let go, to trust again, and finally find peace within myself. As we stood silently beneath the mountain stars, breathing in the gentle night air, I understood something profound. Sometimes, losing what you thought was everything opens the door to finding exactly what you truly deserve. This story reminds us that sometimes the most painful losses can open doors to a stronger, wiser, and happier version of ourselves. Not everyone who enters our lives deserves the love and trust we freely give. But remember, after every heartbreak comes a chance to reclaim your story, find your voice, and ultimately discover the happiness you truly deserve. What about you? Did this story touch your heart? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment 2 if you enjoyed this story, or comment 7 if it wasn't your favorite. And if you found value or inspiration here, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Your support truly means the world to me and motivates me to keep sharing more stories just like this one.